We begin tonight with a little ray of metaphorical sunshine in stormy, stormy Washington.
You know, I am just a eternal optimist.
Mr. Obama christening himself the eternal optimist during a surprise appearance today at the White House briefing room. It was apparently his meeting earlier in the day with congressional Republicans that piqued this outbreak of optimism.
During our meeting, we also touched briefly on how we can move forward on health reform. Let's get the relevant parties together. Let's put the best ideas on the table. My hope is that we can find enough overlap that we can say this is the right way to move forward, even if I don't get every single thing that I want. You know, one of the things that John Boehner and Mitch McConnell both said is they didn't think that the status quo was acceptable. And that's right there promising.
No, it's not. It's not promising, because while you're talking about how you think you're close to being done and there's a lot everybody can agree on and you're looking forward to Republicans participating in a constructive process on the policies on which we agree, here's what they're saying.
It really is time to scrap the bill and start over.
And that was after the meeting with the president that caused the president to feel so sunny about that guy. On the Senate side today, Republican leaders left that meeting with the president, that generator of presidential optimism. They left that meeting and then shut down the Senate over a routine nomination. A presidential nominee for the National Labor Relations Board earned 52 votes in the Senate. Now, do the quick math. 52 out of 100? Yeah, that's a majority, a clear majority. The nomination failed with that majority because it was subjected to a Republican filibuster. As we have discussed many times on this show, Republicans are using the filibuster in a way that it's never been used before in American history, using it to force a routine 60-vote supermajority for every single substantive vote in the Senate. This graph shows cloture votes. The huge spike at the end is from when Republicans lost the Senate and they started using the filibuster on essentially every vote. The effect of that is that the Senate is no longer capable of passing legislation or approving presidential nominees. I know that sounds like hyperbole, but it's not. In the Constitution, there are only a few specific things that require a supermajority. It's ratifying treaties, ratifying constitutional amendments, overriding presidential vetoes, expelling members of Congress, impeachment. Those are the things in the Constitution that require a supermajority, because those are the things, those few things are the things that the Founding Fathers believed should be really hard to do. So they required a supermajority. Now, the Republican minority in the U.S. Senate has decided that a supermajority is required for everything, for basic nominations, for basic legislation of any stripe. This problem has been bubbling under the surface for a while now. Today, it broke out into the open.
April, the president nominated him. May, June, July, August, September, October, November, December, January. Now it's February, and they say we're rushing it. I don't think anybody in America, at the most lethargic, slow-moving, half-dead operation anywhere in the country, thinks that's rushing it when it takes us 10 months to get somebody through.
That was Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio shortly before today's vote. And again, remember, in today's vote, the nominee got 52 votes, 52 yes votes, a majority, and the nomination failed because of a filibuster. Senator Carl Levin told Huffington Post today that the filibuster is going to fall, saying, quote, it will either fall of its own weight, it should fall of its own weight, or it will fall after some massive conflict on the floor, which has happened in the past when there have been rulings from the chair that have led to reform. The last time the rules affecting the filibuster were changed was when I was 2 years old, 1975. That's when the supermajority rule changed from 67 votes to 60. It was changed then because people thought that it was being abused back then. The way it was being used then is nothing like how it's being abused now. Today, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Leahy, said, I'm in my 36th year. I've never seen anything like it. He said he conferred recently with former Senator Walter Mondale, who Ryan Grimm at Huffington Post notes today led the charge to change the filibuster rules the last time around in the 1970s before he became vice president. According to Senator Leahy, Mr. Mondale said it was just inconceivable to anybody at the time that the filibuster would be abused as it is now. Quote, the reason the filibuster rule has been supported all these years is people have used it responsibly. This is unprecedented. Senator Leahy says Democrats are now finally considering ways to change the filibuster rules again. for the first time since 1975. This, of course, will cause a convulsive mass self-immolation by Beltway Common Wisdom proprietors who have tried to pretend these past couple of years that a 60-vote threshold is something normal in the Senate and not something new that has effectively ended the ability of the United States government to make policy. Joining us now is Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon. He's a member of the Senate Finance Committee. Senator Wyden, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Rachel. We're looking at snowpocalypse, too, so it's pretty wild here.
In terms of the functioning of the Senate, is there an institutional problem in the Senate when it comes to conducting routine business in this country now?
I believe there is. I believe that the Senate is being hit right now by a corrosive combination. It's outmoded rules, which is what you've been talking about with respect to the filibuster, and it's also excessive partisanship. And you've got to attack both of them. If you don't, for example, deal with the excessive partisanship, you can change the rules, but people will still find a way around them. You've got to deal with both considerations.
How do you deal with excessive partisanship? Obviously, the president has been sort of moving forward aggressively in a two-pronged way, trying to embarrass people for bald partisanship when they, for example, now oppose things they used to support because the president has decided that he supports them too. He's also tried to express optimism and saying that he really believes there is a bipartisan future. I think I'm not an optimistic person by nature, and maybe that's why I don't see that second part of it as based in reality.
I got to tell you, I think we'll have a real chance on February 25th. And the American people are sick and tired of all this gotcha politics. I think on the health care issue, which we'll be dealing with on February 25th, the president is making it clear that he is going to reach out for common ground. There's a lot to work with. I think our party is right that you cannot fix this without universal coverage. You can't fix this without getting everybody covered, because otherwise the people who are uninsured shift their bills to the insured. I think the other party's got some valid points as well about choice and about competition. We ought to make sure that everybody understands you can fire your insurance company if they don't treat you properly. There is a lot to work with, and what we've got to get away from is zero-sum politics where one side wins, the other side loses.
I feel like that argument, which is similar to what the president has been arguing, makes a lot of sense. It's really only been argued from the Democratic side. It seems like on the Republican side, they're not only not making arguments like that, but they found it to be to their political advantage to just say no, even when their policies are incorporated into the proposed legislation. For example, they've said that they want tort reform to be part of health reform. As you know, tort reform efforts were incorporated into the Senate bill. They're still complaining about tort reform, still complaining about that they're going to vote against it. Are you feeling like there is anything constructive coming from Republicans on this, or are you just asking for that?
I have been talking to Republicans, I've been talking to Democrats, and I think if both sides get together, we can, for example, say, let's go after the special interests rather than each other. Let's try to score policy points rather than political points. Let me give you an example. The Republicans very much want to allow for shopping interstate. Now, we have a very good provision in our bill. It's called Section 1333. It would allow for interstate compacts. That's moving in the direction the Republicans want to go. Let's get into these policy questions. I think we can find common ground, and particularly building around more choice and more competition, we can hold costs down, and that's something that will allow both sides to say we're putting the American people first.
If Republicans continue to pledge to vote no, as they have thus far. And actually, we're talking with Ezra Klein in our next segment about that very section of the bill that you're talking about, a Republican proposal adopted by those who drafted the Senate bill, and something that Republicans still aren't saying they're going to support. If Republicans still pledge to vote against it, despite these constructive efforts, how do you pass it anyway?
I'm prepared to say we are going to keep all options on the table. That includes reconciliation. That includes all options. But what I want to do is make sure, and I think this is what the president deserves credit for, let's go to the policy high ground. Let us continue to find areas where both sides can come together. Certainly, if the president is going to talk about areas like legal reform, I personally believe that insurance reform is absolutely critical. The system is about cherry picking. It's about taking essentially the healthy people, sending sick people over to government programs more fragile than they are. If there's going to be an agreement around the kind of principles the president is talking about in terms of considering legal reform, let's match it with very strong insurance reform. That's the kind of thing that's in the interest of the American people.
Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon braving the snow tonight and showing himself to be as optimistic about the constructive nature of Washington right now as the president is in both cases. Very impressive tonight, sir. Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.